I know. Another video of me looking cute. Y'all, this ain't even mine. It's my mom's. My mom wanted me to make her some bonnets that she can turn into a head wrap, and I'm going to show you how to do just that. We're going to make a bonnet, then we're going to make this long scarf so you could just wrap it up. Honey, you could change it two ways. Now, I will say for the natural girlies, yes, this doesn't have a satin lining. You can put a satin headscarf on before you put these on, but either way, it's fashion. Okay, let's do it. Here is what you're going to need to make this project. This is a yard. We're going to fold it in half like this. Make sure the lines touch as much as possible. Now you're going to fold it this way. Okay, I flipped it. This should have the loose ends, and on this side is the fold. I made this pattern out of paper, and you can do the same thing. If you want to make a pattern like this, you would take a piece of paper. This is kind of like a stock paper, so it has some weight to it, which would be more preferred. But you would take your measuring tape from the corner and you would measure out depending on the measurement, and you're gonna measure all the way around and then cut it out. There's another way you could do it. Grab you some chalk from the Dollar Tree and take your measuring tape and you draw on that fabric with the chalk. Remember, chalk is gonna come out. See how I'm holding the corner there? I'm pinning it down, but I will be honest, I don't always pin my stuff down. Grab yourself a good pair of scissors and cut that out. The next part is to cut this out. That is going to be measured 5 inches. That includes the seam allowance. Okay, 5 inches. I'll mark that. Now hopefully draw a straight line straight up that line. Okay, because we need a longer sash to wrap around the head, we're gonna cut one more piece. I'm not doing both sides like I did the first round. I'm cutting one, just the top part, not the top and the bottom. Does that make sense? So I would only be left with one fold rather than 2 folds. Once I finish cutting this, I'll unfold everything and it'll make sense. We need 2 strips of 36 and 1 strip of 33. That should give us exactly what we need. So everything you did with the first, you're gonna do with the second. But to make sure that my first and my second match up, I take the fabric of the first and pin it to the fabric of my second choice. Okay, this is our 2 long strips. We're gonna cut that out. So 2 long strips means we're cutting through 4 pieces of fabric. This is gonna be my middle piece. I'm gonna cut it on this side because it gives me, see, this is 1 whole fold. It gives me 1 fold right there. That part is not, okay. Just making sure that the lines are even, the folds are even, it's the same length. All right, line these parts up. When you have printed fabric, even solid fabric, there should be a front and a back. The back or the inside of the fabric will be lighter. It's a little hard to tell with this one, but it will be lighter. And the out part, which people would see, that will be a darker tone. This one you can't really tell what's in, what's out, but if you have a fabric that's like that, then you want the inside to look at you, the outside to be touching the ground or the table, wherever you're cutting your fabric. The same thing with your solid. There's sometimes some solid fabrics that one side is darker, one side is lighter. You want the darker side to look at you once you lay it on the first layer, and the lighter part to touch the lighter part of this. You're gonna take this to the iron and iron that out. Pin this. Have your pins, the balls facing out. And for this part, try to put it the same color so you know that I'm going to sew all the way around, but I'm leaving this open. White to white stays open. Everything else that is pinned down, I'm sewing. Remember, we're leaving from white to white open, so I am going to come right here. The edge of my foot is going to touch the edge of the fabric. My needle is right there in the center. I am using a straight stitch. Sew all the way down. Y'all, tell me why I forgot that I needed to leave an opening. I almost closed it all the way. However, there's a little bit of an opening. Now that you have that opening, you're going to flip this inside out. Now that you got that, you're gonna take this back to the ironing board and we'll iron that out. But before you do that, get your sashes. That middle part, again, if you have a fabric that is lighter on one side, darker on the other side, the darker side is touching the ground or the table, wherever you're cutting or pinning, and the lighter side is looking at you. It is sometimes hard to tell, so we are trying our best. Here, put the middle in the middle. I'm gonna pin it to the other longer side. Whatever you do with the print, you do with the solid. And every part that's pinned, sew across there. We're gonna sew the same amount, 1/2 inch on each side, which would be the edge of our foot to the edge of the fabric. The next part is to pin this. And I like to line up those lines where we sewed. I like to line those parts up first. So pin all the way down, and usually I don't pin this part. I don't sew that part until the very end. Then you're gonna sew all the way down. Now that you have one side sewn, let us do the next side. You're going to leave an opening just like you did for the circle because we're going to flip that inside out. So let's make a pin of the opening. I'm just choosing a random spot. It really doesn't have to be any place particular. This is going to be wrapped up around your head, so nobody is going to see. So go ahead and sew all the way down. Remember to leave your opening. Once you do that, once you sew all the way down, then sew across on both sides, and I'll tell you what to do from there. You've sewn your edges. Clearly, I can cut off some excess, so I'm going to do that. You've left your opening. What I want you to do next is cut off any excess that you have, and then you're going to turn it inside out. Before you turn it inside out, for the corners, we cut it like that because it helps when you gotta poke them. So let's cut the excess, let's cut those corners, and meet me back on the ground. I've turned one side inside out, and I'm taking my shish kebab stick. I'm poking it in those corners. I'm using the flat end. Let's do the next side. gather all this fabric until you get to the end. Again, the pointed side is sticking out and I'm using the flat edge to point those out. I've learned my lesson not to use the pointy part because it can sometimes poke through that fabric. You're almost done with the sash. You might hear my kids in just a second. I'm gonna flatten this out as much as you can. With this next part, I like to add starch. If you're not a fan of starch, that is okay. Do what you have. Flatten that out, spray it down, and then iron it down. Once you flatten everything out, you're going to pin that down, stitch it down, and then you will be left with something like this. This is nice and flat, and you would have a small stitching right there. Now let's do the final step. Your bonnet should be nice and flat because you've ironed it. Now we are going to stitch a tunnel so that we can get the elastic inside. On your sewing machine, there should be some measurements on there. Make sure the edge of your fabric is touching the 1 inch line. You can draw an inch with chalk all the way around and stay on that line. Just make sure you're 1 inch away from the edge. All right, let's go ahead and sew all the way around. One thing I'm doing as I'm sewing is making sure this is staying flat. My hand again is under that fabric. Sew all the way until you meet where you started. I like to back stitch, cut that, cut off the excess thread. Now I am going to use this tool to get the elastic through. You can also use a safety pin. Me and safety pins, we fight. So I'm glad I got that tool. I actually got it from Shein. This is the elastic that I'm using. You know what? Keep a pin by your opening because Lord, I'm always losing the opening. All right. Now that you got that on, whether you use a safety pin or you use this type of device, go ahead and slide that through. What I do suggest is pinning the other end to the inside of the fabric. That way it doesn't move while you're doing this. This is going to take some time, so go ahead and do that. I've unpinned the other side of the elastic. And I'm about to pull this through. Oh, Lord. No. Oh, my gosh. Oh, come on, come on. Ooh. Y'all, look. Oh, my gosh. Okay. It's like the worst fear of doing these things. Whew. Now that you pulled that through, put that on top of each other, put it on your sewing machine. I'm gonna choose the zigzag stitch, back stitch, and go forward, back stitch again. And voila, you are done. Now, stretch this gather out. Now you have that close. Let's pull this all the way around now. Okay, and now let's look at your creation.